Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Duck the IRS. I am your host, Parham Khorsandi, attorney at law, managing partner at Victory Tax Lawyers. Today, we have a great guest, Michelle Manoyan. She has worked with us in the tax industry for about 5 years now, Michelle? Is
About
that right?
5 years, yeah.
A fantastic employee. And Michelle started working here when she was like 19, no, Michelle?
Yeah, I was still in college and I, got this job through a mutual friend and been here for 5 years. It's been amazing. I've been working with Parham and Amir, learning, absorbing all of the information. So, yeah.
Great. So Michelle, actually, when she first started, our mutual friend was like, hey, I have somebody who's looking for some part-time work. And we said, yeah, send her over. This is when we're just in the infancy stages of our law firm.
Yeah.
And we were in like a dumpy building in downtown Los Angeles. We barely had internet. And she was one of our first employees at that time. But she was part-time and, we said, yeah, we'll give her some work. And then as time went on, we're like, hey, she's really good. She's really smart, knows what she's doing. She's aggressive. She likes to fight. I think that's the Middle Eastern and Armenian side. She wants to fight. And so she's just been learning and been with us ever since and really our right hand here at VTL.
Yeah. I mean, at that time I was in college. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. I was majoring in business and I kind of just it was so broad and I had so many areas to explore. So I was just trying to figure it out. And when I started working with you guys, I never imagined in a million years that I would be interested in the tax field. I feel like for anyone that's not in it, it's so daunting. It's very you're so scared of the IRS. Right. You don't know. There's not much information because you don't learn it in school. So yeah, once I started working with you guys and I really found interest in it, I was so surprised, but I was also really excited.
Yeah. It's great because we're dealing mostly with the IRS. And when you're dealing with IRS, it's not attorneys, it's just IRS agents. And that's right. what our episode today is going to be is new IRS agents that have been assigned for audits and exam. So we all know that Congress gave billions of dollars to the IRS, right? And what are they doing with that money? Well, the $80 billion, they're not just going to get $80 billion right away. It's going to be staggered over a 10-year period or so. So what they've earmarked now is the next set of funds that they're going to be using is going to go strictly for examinations and audits. And they've already started doing that with new employees. So today's episode, we're going to talk about new employees that are working under exam and audits at the IRS. And so we've worked a lot of the cases, Michelle and I together, with these new employees. And I'm sorry, they suck.
They really do.
They really do. And it's a lot of it is not their fault,
Yeah.
So before COVID, everybody would get trained in person, retreats, month-long training programs in Orlando and other places. And the training was really intense. Mm-hmm. It was really intense and it was all in person. Now, since COVID, the training is very minimal and it's all done via Zoom or some type of video conference.
Yeah.
So the new employees that are assigned to some of these exams and audits are like brand new, freshly minted, have not worked cases before and are literally reading off of a script.
Which works in our advantage sometimes, but also not.
That is true.
Yeah. That
is true. And at the end of today's episode, we'll talk about a case that worked in our advantage because of that. So these examiners, they don't have to have an accounting degree. They just need to graduate college with some type of bachelor's degree. Doesn't need to be in accounting. They go through non-vigorous training. I'll put it in a nice way. And then they get assigned to a case.
Right.
And so when they get assigned to a case, and again, if you guys have watched our previous podcasts, there are really two major departments of the IRS. The assessment side, how much do you owe, which exams and audits fall into, and then the collection side. We're not talking about collections. Right. We're talking about, the IRS sends you a letter and says your tax return is now open for exam and we're going to do a full-blown audit for you.
Yeah.
And so you'll get that letter from the IRS and it'll have somebody who's called a revenue agent assigned. And that revenue agent is responsible for doing the full audit, going through your tax return, getting all the documents and kind of figuring out, hey, what is the true amount that you owe? Did you pay too little? Did you pay too much? Yeah, right. They're always trying to assess more. And that's what they're asking for is, did you pay too much money or did you not pay enough? Usually they don't accept documentation and they say, hey, you didn't pay enough and you have to pay. And then we have other rights that we can go through and do. And our track record has been pretty good over the last few years. I would say really good. But now the snag and what we're going to talk about are these new agents that have come on and have been assigned. And so typical situation now is this new agent comes on board. They have very, very low inventory, and our clients sort of become the guinea pig for these agents to do the work. And so they're really reading by the script and saying, walking down a list of questions that they want or a list of documentation that they need with no forethought, with no understanding of the whole process, without any regard of closing the case. They are just so new to this process that they're literally taking baby steps, and the only thing that they know is just the next step in front of them. And it can get frustrating on our end because we are very aggressive when it comes to the IRS. And so we don't follow that script. We don't follow that procedure. We kind of just tell them, hey, this is the way that we want it to go. And the more seasoned revenue agents, they kind of understand that.
They won't try to nitpick at every little thing, and they know what they're asking for and why they're asking for it. And versus the new agents, they're kind of just, like you said, following a script. They don't really know what they're looking for. They're just kind of going with what they were told.
Exactly. And you really have to think of it as like a customer service agent.
Yeah.
If you have a customer service agent when you call AT&T because you want to dispute something on your bill, and that customer service rep has been with AT&T for 20 years as a customer service rep, they understand. They've heard it so many times. They know what the end goal is. They know how to resolve the case. But if you call somebody on customer service, any industry, it doesn't matter. I'm not necessarily saying IRS. Any industry, you call them and they're brand new. The only thing that they know to answer is your question with another question or to read through their manuscript to answer that question. They are not answering the question to move forward to the end resolution and to the goal. And that's what we see with these revenue agents. They ask for all these documentation, and a lot of times they don't even know why they're asking for the documentation. It just says in the manual that, hey, you should ask for this documentation.
Right. And it's funny because it's like you'll almost be the one telling them, like, you're looking for this, right? Or you're like leading them in. You're the one training the IRS agent in a way, which is funny.
And that's a good point because we talked about the training because they don't have the in-person training and because the training is not the way that it used to be. They're training by working these cases. It's hands-on training. So sometimes that's to the detriment of our clients. But, and I always say this, I say a good tax attorney knows the rules, knows the law, and can understand that. That's a good tax attorney. How you get to a great tax attorney or somebody who can really go above and beyond and really be a fantastic attorney is not only knowing the law and understanding the law, but understanding the IRS process and procedure and using it against the IRS. Yeah, exactly. And Michelle knows it. She finished my sentence because she says it all. I say it all the time. And so in these kind of situations, if you don't understand the IRS process and procedure, you can fall into this trap with these newer agents, and they will ask you for everything under the sun, and the audit will take 2 years, and there's no end game in sight, and they're literally just training through your client. And that can get really frustrating because your client doesn't want to provide all these documents. They don't want to be in the case for 2 years. We don't want to be in the case for 2 years, and we don't want to be the test subject for this new agent to learn. So it can get frustrating. On the other side, we've had situations where it's really worked in our benefit, and the inexperience or the novelty that these agents bring, we kind of turn that into an advantage for us and take advantage of that. And what we mean by that is, if an agent is not seasoned enough to understand the end game and the end process, and they're just looking for the next step, you can kind of veer them in the direction that you want and avoid certain items on the tax return by understanding how they are processing this whole audit. And if they're only looking at the next step and they're not looking at the big picture or 4 steps ahead, we can kind of steer them into the direction that we want.
Right.
And so that does take some, finesse and some aggressive ability to represent your client. But all in all, would we prefer this to be the case?
I don't know. I can't tell.
I would say probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not, because it could get frustrating.
Yeah, it can.
It could get frustrating because they're so by the book. They're so, ready to just check a box and move forward that it does impede the process of getting to the end game. And so I'll start with a funny story from maybe 10 or 15 years ago. I was working at a different place, not my own law firm, not Victory Tax Lawyers. I was an employee at a tax firm. And we went to go meet IRS counsel. And I had worked with IRS counsel a little bit and knew some of the attorneys, but this attorney that I had worked with was a new attorney. And she was new and had just gotten started. And every time we would talk to him, his manager would be there too. And every phone call, he would have to say, I need to ask my manager. And everything had to get run through the manager. And so when we went to go meet her and the manager, and I would say, okay, well, we're going to concede to this. We want to move forward with that. He would stop me and say, no, we need to look at the documents for all of it, or I need to ask my manager. I don't know if I could do that. And it really something that should have taken 10 minutes was taking 1 hour.
Yeah.
Then when it came time to add up and crunch up a few numbers, we had a sheet in front of us, everybody, with all the numbers, and we went to add them up, and everybody was looking for their phones to get a calculator. And she said, one moment, I have a calculator, and had a calculator on the watch and was inputting the numbers on there, which was really funny to me at this point that, she was so prepared and so new and so green that this was her. She had bought this watch exactly for this moment.
Yeah. She was so prepared.
Which was in retrospect, I'm glad she had it there and it was great and it was fine. Now dealing with that same IRS counsel attorney, I love dealing with her now. When a tax court case is assigned to her, we just go through it. She totally understands what the end game is, tries to get everything done, really amicable to get the process going. So it just shows you that, people who start with the IRS in the beginning are really bright-eyed and have an understanding of, okay, I'm here at the IRS. It's my civic duty. Yes, I'm getting paid, but I'm representing the U.S. government. And how do I do that properly?
Right.
Versus somebody who's been with the service for 10 years and is more okay, how do I help as many people as I can and get to the end result and close the cases and move on?
Right.
Which is two separate
they have two different initiatives.
Do you have any examples, Michelle, that you want to?
Yeah, we have one example recently, which was really great news for us.
Okay, which one is this?
So we had a client that came to us that was pretty much in the beginning stages of her audit. And she had already had a representative who was helping her, but I think that person had already kind of seen how difficult that case was going to be and just kind of didn't want anything to do with it.
A representative, like a POA?
Yeah, it was a CPA that was already on the case.
Not an attorney.
Right, no. She was a CPA and she really didn't want to get into it. So this client had to seek other representation, which she ended up coming to us. And she was in a really bad position. She hired a very fraudulent CPA
to prepare the return.
To prepare her return, and he had put a bunch of bogus expenses, deductions that are so outrageous. It was like begging for an audit. This was not like anything discreet. It was really bad. And so she came to us. She was super anxious, super nervous because, it wasn't her personal tax return. It was a C corporation tax return. And a lot of people that get into business, tax literacy is not common. So it's not something you learn in school. So you depend on tax professionals to be able to help you prepare tax returns, not even just your personal, but specifically for your business.
Especially for your business. Yeah.
So she depended on this person to help her and guide her and do things by the law in the right way. And he obviously didn't. And so she was audited, and pretty much everything on her return was not.
I now know who you're talking about.
Yeah, it pretty much.
So that case really sticks out, and we're going to tell you guys why. So the first examiner that was assigned, he was a cool guy, right? Yeah. He didn't really care much, didn't really follow the rules, was kind of going a little rogue, accepted some things, didn't accept other things, and ultimately said, okay, this is our proposal. And we didn't agree with that, right? We wanted to go to tax court.
Right.
Yeah. So we wanted to go to tax court on this case. And then we never heard from this examiner again. And so we called him, he didn't respond. And then, a few months went by, and then his manager got involved with the case as the second revenue agent on the case, right? And so she said, hey, we're going to open up another year. We need more documentation, and kind of went exact opposite of what the original revenue agent. And she even said, he did everything wrong. He didn't know what he's doing. He was still in training. We don't know why he did it this way. We need to go back and reopen that first year and then open up an additional year. And so we met with her. She was nice. Everyone's nice here. We're not saying that the people are mean or anything. It's they're just lack of training was a problem. So she got assigned, right? The second agent.
Yeah.
And then we went through expenses with her, right?
Yeah. We didn't want to provide everything we had already given to the original revenue agent. So we just told her to see what she already has, and try to work with us on what she already had, so that we wouldn't have to put the pressure on the taxpayer as well, because it's already nerve-wracking to have one revenue agent and then to know someone completely new is assigned. Yeah,
and it's kind of like a reset. When somebody new gets assigned, it's not like they just pick up the ball and go. Yeah. They kind of want to go back and see what was done, and then you have to resubmit. You have to do all these things to get back to square one.
Yeah.
And so we provided information to her. Few months goes by, and because she was a revenue officer manager, she couldn't have so many cases in her inventory. Then a third revenue agent gets assigned. And so this third revenue agent was asking for the same documentation and even opened up another tax year.
Right.
So we went from only tax year 2020 being open, and we thought it's going to close out with the first agent because he had provided us with a settlement. That didn't happen. Another agent gets assigned, opens up 2021, and then the third agent gets assigned and opens up 2022. At this point, me and Michelle are frustrated.
Yeah.
We are pissed. We're like, this is not fair. We really like this client. She would come by the office and come visit us, and we really had a personal relationship with her. So then at that point, I told this third agent, I said, look, we're not providing any more documentation. We've provided it once. If you can't find it, that's on you. This is so frustrating. It's the third agent. This is taking too long. You guys opened up 2 new tax years for no reason. You haven't even told us why. We're not providing any more documentation. The first revenue agent was going to close out the case, and it didn't happen. And we really gave it to them.
Yeah, we did.
And that's not like citing any law or anything, right? It was just like we were just upset.
Frustrated,
we were frustrated. We voiced our concerns with them. And then she said, okay, I don't know what we could do, but I'll let you know. And a few months went by. And then what happened, Michelle, at the end?
She ended up calling us back and saying, you know what, I'm the third agent assigned. We understand your frustration, and we're basically closing it out. We're moving forward.
So that's called a no change audit, which basically means that they're not making any changes to the exam, which is great news for us. We want a no change audit because it basically means no new assessments. So ultimately, after all that time and frustration and understanding that, 3 agents, 3 tax years, everything could potentially be really harmful because of our aggressive advocacy, and we blamed everything on that first agent that didn't do everything right. they called us back and they said, okay, we're closing out this audit. We're not going to make any more additional assessments. Just that first year got assessed, and
Other
they
years
closed
were never reopened.
and they closed out the case. Yeah,
Yeah.
and nothing else got reopened. So that was fantastic. Loved the result. The client was ecstatic, of course, but it just shows you that, you know, the IRS doesn't always follow the right procedure, and we try to use that against them. And these new agents are not always the best agents, but if you have the proper representation, you could really use it against them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So great story, Michelle. Great job on that case.
Thank you.
So everybody beware. You know, we say duck the IRS because we want to try to avoid them at all costs, but sometimes you can't, especially because they're spending billions of dollars to get new agents for new exams and new audits. So, you know, it's a situation that we don't want to deal with new agents. It's hard to deal with, but it's part of the job. And sometimes we do get great results by, you know, working against these new agents and trying to fill the holes that the IRS provides us with.
Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you
Great.
for having me.
Of course. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we'll catch you next time on Duck the IRS podcast.